Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we're talking about the box office preview for Thor, Love and Thunder, which opens this week, and the projected opening is as expected to be quite strong, or at least that's what the projections are saying, with it expected to open between $140 and $167 million in the domestic market, and Lord knows it'll probably have a similar number or probably even a higher number in the international market, as Marvel films tend to play very well in international marketplaces. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about Paws of Fury, The Legend of Hank. Some people have asked about that for some reason. And also we now have numbers for DC League of Super Pets, which I have no interest in whatsoever. But hey, some of you might actually care, and why I think that the numbers that they're giving for the film might be a little bit more on the high end of things. But before we go any further, please make sure you smash that like button, love that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, and also make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with that bell notification. That way you know every time a video or live stream goes live on the channel. Still don't know how I get through the way I do in one piece. But of course, the big news is Thor Love and Thunder is opening this weekend, and the pinpoint forecast from our friends over at Box Office Pro says $155 million opening weekend for this film. And so this is going to be the standard by which we judge it, I think. And I think a lot of people are going to say, okay, how close does it get to this number? Does it succeed? Or rather, does it go past this number? Does it, come underneath this number? How exactly does it match up with these overall projections? And if Disney's track record, especially over the last couple of months, really proves itself to remain consistent, it might seem that it would be easy to say Disney is going to end up coming lower than this projected number. Again, these are numbers that really haven't changed all that much. There's been some slight drops in the overall projections for this movie, but we'll have to wait and see. This is going to be an interesting dynamic, because we obviously have the MCU stands are going to come out strong for this movie, but then there's also become this very strong movement amongst especially a lot of families to say, yeah, you know what, screw you, Disney, I'm not bringing my kids to go see your content anymore because you're very clearly trying to push political messaging and gender ideology upon my children, and I don't want you to do that anymore. Things like the shows Baymax, and of course with Lightyear, and we already see what happened with Lightyear. Many are suspecting that Thor Love and Thunder and all the other future MCU films, and Disney has been very open and honest about how they plan to put this kind of stuff into their films, that this is the kind of thing that they're not going to want to bring their families to. So will this have an impact or not? We'll have to, of course, wait and see. When it comes to films like Thor Love and Thunder, which is much more geared towards older audiences, older demographics, so a lot more single people who are older, not as much as a family audience is concerned, which is interesting because, you would think Marvel used to be very much focused on pushing for families, pushing for, a lot of those major ticket sales that can come from very large families at that. However, it does seem like they've been starting to push themselves into a bit of a corner here. So the MCU stands probably will continue to show up strong for this film. But yeah, this is going to be the first film since we had Doctor Strange 2, which, though it made hundreds of millions in net profit, which is a very good thing, it also did not quite reach that $1 billion mark, which, based off of the early numbers, it seemed to indicate it had at least the start to be able to get to that point. So it had a strong enough start to where, had it had consistently strong holds from week to week, if it had been a good movie, like for instance in the case of Top Gun Maverick, which was phenomenal, had a pretty strong opening weekend, better than expected, but then also had insane holds each and every week, which is why that film's now at $1.1 billion and could end up at 1.2, maybe even 1.3 billion by the end of its run. You look at a film like Doctor Strange 2, which fell off like a cliff, and even though it had a strong opening weekend and still was able to make over $950 million and have lots of money in net profits, even when you subtract the production and typical marketing cost, you look at a film like Thor Love and Thunder and you think to yourself, okay, how many people were lost from Doctor Strange 2? And that's basically how I look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe now, how I look at the MCU now, is basically this long-range, long-term law of diminishing returns. As we always talk about here on the channel, whenever you have a movie that comes out, every single week it's going to lose a little bit more money, or rather it's not going to make as much money as the previous week before, right? This law of diminishing returns. A lot of people go to see things up front, and then over time those audiences drop off. You sometimes have exceptions to that, or rather you sometimes have films like Top Gun Maverick, which can withstand those because they have very small drops from week to week. But then other times, especially for bigger films, you actually have much bigger drop-offs because more people want to go see it opening weekend to try to avoid spoilers, to try and go see things because they've been hyped up and excited to see it for a very long time. And I think that probably will be the case once again with Thor Love and Thunder, but it'll be interesting to see where this film ends up matching against Doctor Strange 2. That's going to be the film I compare it to, because if this film comes underneath Doctor Strange 2, in any stretch or any way whatsoever, that is going to be, for me at least, a strong sign that the MCU is starting to lose steam quite a bit. Now, again, MCU stands will probably come to the comment section and probably talk about, you're just hating on the MCU, just hating on Disney, blah, 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 blah. But it's like, yeah, well, I don't have... I don't go against Disney without my reasons, whether it's, like Universal or many other studios, funding the CCP, or whether it is them trying to, again, convert kids and try to teach kids things that should be taught by parents. And again, basically going into groomer status, we should obviously look at the actual quality of the films themselves. And if we're really honest with each other, we would look at something like Doctor Strange 2 and say, yeah, not a very good film. And very clear in its messaging there. Again, especially when Doctor Strange at many times in the movie becomes a secondary character, amongst other things. But Thor: Love and Thunder, we couldn't possibly expect to see Thor become a secondary character in his own movie, could we? No, especially with mighty Thor, female Thor coming in. Never going to happen. We'll have to wait and see. But regardless of that, Thor has become a very popular property. Thor Ragnarok did very well. Again, I've talked about this before, and I know that a lot of people disagree with me. I personally thought that Thor Ragnarok was a lot of fun, though I do, of course, give in to any of the criticisms that are laid against it for not matching up to, one, previous iterations of the character within the MCU's own franchise of the character, or two, and I think more notably, the characterization within the comics, and it being vastly different as far as the overall tone and overall characterization itself. So it'll be interesting to see at the very least how the film ends up doing. We do, as I mentioned, have also some early numbers for The Paws of Fury, Legend of Hank, expected to make 9 to 14 million in its opening weekend, 28 to 45 million in the total domestic run. So could probably add another 20 to 40 million dollars internationally. I don't see the film necessarily being a massive hit. The film costs $45 million, and so it's going to have to make itself, a little bit of money in order to make its money back. And it's going to be kind of, I don't know. It seems to me that this film has a chance of hitting that break-even point, but not making that much more. So I could see either a small loss for this movie or a very, very small gain. Where The Crawdads Sing is a film where, again, I've seen the trailer for it. It looks kind of interesting. But I hate the title of it. I know it's based off of a book or it's adapted from a book. But again, someone from New Orleans, it's like, no, crawfish. Come on, get the crawdad stuff out of here. But anyway, $17 to $26 million opening weekend, 48 to 85 million. We'll see exactly how that holds up. This is a film from Sony. We also have another film from Universal coming out, Jordan Peele's next film. I'm sure it has nothing to do with race, as none of his films have ever anything to do with race, but the film Nope, which actually has a very interesting concept, at least for me, because it's an alien film. It's a horror alien film, and I always like the directions that Jordan Peele takes narratively with his stories. The problem with his stories, though, is that they always have these racial tints to them, which I do think isolates the audience, and in the end leaves people thinking to themselves, yeah, you know what, that could have been an amazing film that I would have watched, more and more every single year, except I'm always reminded, oh, that's right, he's got this weird racial agenda in every single one of his movies. It's like, dude, come on, man, you're a talented filmmaker. Let's just tell good stories here. But again, that's just me. DC League of Super Pets, expected to open to $46 million, $120 to $110 million total in its domestic market. And here's the thing, I don't really buy that. I really don't think it's going to do that well. This is a Warner Brothers picture. Warner Brothers has not been doing well at the box office at all. So anytime I see a higher number for a film from Warner Brothers, I always scratch my head immediately and say, you know what, I don't quite trust this number right off the bat, because let's just be honest, Warner Brothers and Disney both, as these giant corporations, these giant companies, have been losing hundreds of millions of dollars on almost all of their films because they spend so much on them. We don't have a budget yet for this movie. And so it's going to be hard to say whether or not the film is going to be a flop or not, but it is one where one could suspect it's a Warner Brothers picture. They always overspend just like Disney does. Wouldn't be surprised if it cost between $100 and $200 million, even though it doesn't look like it would have cost nearly that much. We'll have to wait and see with this one, though. I personally am not that interested in it altogether. Some people have asked my thoughts about it. Again, I just don't really find any interest in the DC universe anymore. I think that, for me, Zack Snyder kind of overstepped his, kind of did a little bit too much creatively, to the point of pushing a lot of people away. So much so that I just don't even care about anything that's coming from the DCEU or even the DC animated universe, which I've heard a lot of good things about. This is obviously a very different take on that. It's not a typical DC animated film, and it's taking it more so, going in the kids' direction, right, with the Super Pets angle. So maybe it'll be successful. Who knows? But I don't know. I just, for me, anything DC this doesn't really seem like it's going to do as well. But those are my thoughts on these films. What are your thoughts? Do you think that DC League of Super Pets is going to be a hit? Again, we'll have to wait and see what those numbers are for its budget to be able to say one way or the other if it's going to be able to make its money back. But then, of course, the big news is Thor: Love and Thunder. Do you think it's going to hit this $155 million 3-day opening domestically? I think that it has a chance to do so. I do think there's still a lot of MCU stands that are out there. Again, I obviously want the film and I want Disney to fail ultimately, especially more recently with some of the stuff that they have been pushing, just to have a big message be sent to them and to their board members and to their shareholders to say, yeah, you know what? Instead of, renewing the contract of Bob Chapek, instead of keeping people like Kathleen Kennedy around, instead of keeping all of these, basically, no better way of saying it, all these groomers around, how about instead you start to have a change of leadership and start to make good movies again instead of some of this political garbage nonsense? But what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, slap that fire button on Odyssey. Y'all are amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to my July Patreon Subscribe Star and Locals members at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above. First starting off with Brandon, let's go Brandon, Chris from the 80s, who you can check out over on YouTube, Garrett Searles, Heimir Ari Hymason, Jeff Toon, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Laura, The Modern Major General Story, Father, Luca Illick, Orange Hat Reviews, who you can also check out over on his YouTube channel as well. Congrats on recently getting to 1,000 subscribers. Rosetta Allen, who you can also find on YouTube as well. Stan Andrian and Miss Martin Muses, who also has her own YouTube channel. Thank you all very much for supporting me over on the platform of Patreon. We also have my Subscribe Star members, Matt317, Storm Tracker, The R, Fast Reaction, John B, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alice McCarthy Jr., shout out to you, good sir, and continue that awesome recovery that you are doing. Dean Heiss, J-Rod, the Beer Guru, and ZK-Man. ZK-Man, you can find out over and follow him on Twitter as well. And we also have my Locals members. We have of course, the lovely and amazing Minnesota hockey fan. How about a hockey player? UAB UAB Mad Dog, Mike Jackson for the win, and Robert Barnes, as well as Brett D90. Thank you very much. And my last supporter, of course, is the amazing Tina B, Empress of the Universe, one of my mods on the channel. Check out her new show with my other Valkyrie, Stephanie B, on her channel, Tina B's channel, which is called Soup to Nuts. Go check that out because it is pretty awesome and fun content. Anyway, that is going to be it for all of my Keeper of the Bifrost level members and above. If you want your name shouted out at the end of every video and live stream, please make sure that you check out the top link of the video description. It is w.lo, the Willow link, as I like to call it, and you can find my Patreon, Subscribe Star, etc., where you can get not only shoutouts, but also access to an exclusive podcast that I do with John the Flickpick Flickinger every single month, and also access to giveaways of Blu-rays, 4Ks, etc., all that good stuff. Check that out in the video description. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.